Okay, now we should be recording.
Okay. So welcome. I am Lady Satake Naname, and this is the history of Japanese scrolls. So welcome. This class will focus on scroll materials that were used in period and how to distinguish period and modern scroll styles from each other. We will touch briefly on how styles changed over time, but the purpose of this class is to assist scribes with resources and ideas for creating more accurate looking scrolls for Japanese personas. I have a few disclaimers. I know, they're all awful. Please keep in mind that I'm not narrowing the field for what should or should not be used as a Japanese award in the SEA. There's an extraordinary number of items in Japanese history that can be used as inspiration for awards. I'm a firm believer in awarding something meaningful to a recipient. Please utilize whatever you feel fits the person. We get all the time, for example, with Viking awards, people get rocks that are carved. I want a Varia rock at some point. So even though I don't have a Viking persona, I really want one someday. So, I mean, it's things like that that aren't necessarily traditional for the SEA purposes, but it is traditional to that persona. So keep that in mind. Now, time does not allow us to review every art type. This class is simply an introduction to the Japanese painting and general scribal arts. This class will not cover pottery, sculpture, or metalwork, but I hope to cover those in another class in the future. I am not fluent in Japanese. Please forgive my pronunciations if you're a speaker of the language or if you know the words better than I. And we are limited on time, and I have a lot of material to cover. I think I have well over 200 scrolls, 200 slides. So I apologize in advance. And so I will leave time at the end for questions, but I'm fine to answer a few questions as we go along, but I don't want to get off topic too much. So just heads up. So we can go back in detail at the end if we have more time, but you're welcome to email me as well if you want to do a discussion later. So let's talk about the time periods of Japan. So we have the Jomon, which is 14,000 BC to 300 BC. The Yayoi, which is 300 BC to 250 CE, the Kofun, which is 250 CE to 538 CE, the Suka, which is the 538 to 710 CE, the Nara period, which is 710 to 794, Heian, which is 794 to 1185, Kamakura, which is 1185 to 1336, Muromachi, which is 1336 to 1573, Nazuchi Momoyama, which is the 1573 to 1603, which is just a teensy bit over the SEA 1600s deadline. And then people like to squish just barely over to the Edo period, but the Edo period ranges up into the 1800s, so I don't like to go up there. So we kind of avoid that. But you'll see that on my presentation that I put these little brackets on the sides of some of the periods. So that's when most of the scribal arts were around, because that's when paper was around. Anything prior to the Nara period, we probably don't have any surviving examples because paper was very poor quality. So keep that in mind. I don't have a lot of examples from the scrub period. So let's talk about mainland Asia. The art of Japan should not be considered a clone of the arts of China or Korea, since some of the finest examples of Far East art were produced in Japan. One example that I like to point out is the folding fan. That is just Japanese ingenuity right there. So, and that wasn't created by any other culture. Now, Japan may have emulated the style of China and Korea, which had a more sophisticated and established artwork in earlier periods, but Japan created new styles that were also reflected in mainland Asian art. The influence of Buddhism and the use of the kanji writing system are additional factors in creating similar art and iconography through the Far East. And I wanted to show you, there is some mural art from the Suka period that is here on the left. and it's the detail of beachin, the beautiful women murals. And you can see the similarities with a scroll from a admonition scroll from China. You can see the facial shapes are very similar, the eyes. So you can see that they are duplicating what comes from China. And you'll see those similarities, but they tend to branch off later in period. It's very interesting how they change. So some of the materials that they used, as everybody else seems to use, is wood, paper, silk, brush, ink, and paint. And they also have seals, which is kind of their own art form, but it's very cool and really part of the artwork, truly. Now, this is my one bit of metalwork that I will put in here, I promise. So this is really beautiful. This is a Nara period or an 8th century writing and painting utensil set. This is said to be made up of pieces from Japan, Korea, and China. And this is beautiful artistry from all 3 regions. The water pot and the ink cake rest are thought to be from Japan or China. I think they say the ink cake rest, which is on the right, is said to be from Japan. And the spoons down below, the water spoons, are thought to be from Korea. The water pot is actually on display through the Google Arts and Culture site right now, so you can go take a look at that. I'm going to keep descriptions on most materials pretty brief because we have a lot of material to cover, but you can look and see what I put on there. But we could do a whole class on materials alone. They're so fantastic. So moving on. It's estimated, well, let's talk about bamboo a little bit and wood. It's estimated that 50% of Japan is forested land. The most common trees were various types of cypress, laurel, mulberry, magnolia, keaki, polana, and pine. The wood that most artisans would use for high-end crafts was polana. Bamboo was less reliable as a foundational material, but it was good for making cases and caps from makimono reels. Bamboo was more popular as mokan as well, and mokan we'll talk about later. This is a beautiful hanging scroll of pine, plum, and bamboo in the snow. And it's a later period scroll, which I really love. So paper, because paper was such poor quality during this period, the 6th century, we don't have any surviving scrolls from that era. Like I said before, washi is the general term for Japanese paper. Washi is generally made from gampi, which is a shrub, kozo, which is mulberry trees, hemp, and mitsumara, which is an oriental paper bush. So that's what makes it so unique. Most paper seems to be made out of linen or out of other types of trees. So it's really unique that it's made from that type of bush. Now it's said that over 180 types of paper were used in the Nara period, the 7th to 8th century documents. Dyed papers were predominantly used in sacred texts. In the Heian period, the 9th to 12th centuries, paper became much more decorated and elaborate with marbling and the addition of pressed materials such as flora, gold, silver, and even insects. And it was highly prized, and each region made their own specific type of paper. So, and even the emperor at some point had people make specialized papers or designated special areas to make documents, sorry. Paulana, yes, exactly. Thank you for answering that question. So this is a beautiful example of marbled paper. So marbled paper was also another artwork as well. So what they did, they would put ink on top of water and they would kind of swirl it on top of the water. And then they would lay the paper on top of it and kind of dip it in and then pull it out. And it would dye that paper into these beautiful swirls. So you can see that on this example on the right, but they also have flecks of silver and gold. And you can see in addition to those flecks, they've painted little, down here in the middle, little maple leaves and other types of leaves and a few birds here and there. So it was really an in-depth art form more than just doing it, just making paper. So brushes or fure are made from bamboo generally. The oldest brushes in Japan are those in the Shosoin at Nara, which is the Emperor's Shomu's treasure of the 8th century. And the Shosoin is the Imperial Household Treasures collection. They have great materials. They have a website. You can go look at all sorts of things. I highly recommend it. Now, these brushes are made out of raccoon, rabbit, and animals fur that range in length from 11 to 25 inches. Brushes were eventually made from the hair of the horse and the deer in the Heian period. Most handles were made from a high-end bamboo. Fure generally don't show a difference between those that are used for painting and calligraphy. Modern fure diameters vary, but I haven't done enough research to determine if this is the case in period as well. You can see there actually is a case for this fure. This is the case for this one in particular to kind of protect it, which I thought was interesting. Many inks and paints were extremely toxic in period. Tenenegawa inogu, natural mineral pigments, are pigments derived from natural ingredients such as minerals like rocks and who knows what else. Shells, coral, and semi-precious stones like malachite, azurite, and cinnabar. And from what I understand, cinnabar can be poisonous in certain amounts. Nikawa, or hide glue, is used as a binder for these pigments. Many of these materials are also used for urushi, which is lacquering. And the traditional way of lacquering is also very toxic and poisonous. Sorry, getting my notes. Traditional ink is usually made of soot from vegetables, pine, sesame, or other lampblack. Traditionally, it was formed into sticks, held together with animal-based glue and preservatives and perfumes. These sticks would be wetted and ground on an inkstone to get usable ink, then formed into highly decorated sticks or bricks. These are actually collectors. They're actually collectors of sumi ink out there in the world, just like fine wine collectors, because a lot of times they would have individual stamps for creators of the ink. So they're very highly prized because they were artistic as well. Everything, I swear, is done very artistically by the Japanese people. Even the most utilitarian things are very artistic. It's beautiful. And most ancient inkstones were not made out of stone, so it kind of goes against the inkstone. They were made from earthenware. Others could be made from wood, and there is a beautiful example of a wooden inkstone from the Nara period in the Tokyo National Museum. But this one shows that well for water that I thought was a good example that we see pretty common in Asian painting. Please excuse me. Now, seals or tenkoku insho and hanko, most people call them hanko. These seals were kind of a signature. So these seals were mainly used to signify the owner of the artwork. You'll see multiple stamps on a prestigious or valuable piece of art. Sometimes the seals will be stamped over each other to be the one true owner of something amazing. Seals were also used in the course of everyday life as well to mark goods, officiate paperwork, mark authenticity, etc. Seals can be made out of soapstone, metal, wood, and clay. Now these on here from the Horuji temple, these are made out of bronze, and these are from the Suka period. So these are really ancient, if we think about it. So these are from the 7th century. Excuse me. Now, most people in the SCA, they will carve them out of soapstone or other hard stones. There's a few people back in the East Kingdom that I know that have made them for each other as gifts, and they're very beautiful. I don't have examples because they haven't given me permission to use them, but they're really fantastic. So the subject matter that most Japanese would use painting-wise were nature, which include landscapes, birds, fish, insects, flowers, trees, you name it. And they would also paint the supernatural, mythological figures, legends, ghosts, demons. We're kind of used to that in the Japanese culture. religious figures, philosophical figures, which sometimes cross over into the religious figures. They kind of get intermixed with each other quite often. And then a lot of architectural painting, and there's a lot of portraits painted, especially in later period, lots of portraits. And I love this portrait on the right here, the detail of the portrait of the Pisaito Ichi. So he has a mix of really realistic painting style, but it's also a mix of the really loose sume style that was really starting to become prevalent in the later period. So it's really a nice mixture of both. So all the different formats that they would use are what we're kind of focusing on today. And it's really good to see all the different types of materials that you can use as a scribe. And we're just going based on age and how they kind of develop through time. So the mokon, which is the folding wooden slats and tablets. These are really interesting, so I'm excited to show you those. The amakimono, which are the hand scrolls. The kakijiku, or the kakimono, which are the hanging scrolls. The orihan, which are the books and booklets. The byobyu, which are the stationary and folding screens. The fusuma, which are sliding doors and wall panels. And also fans, which we have both folding and stationary in period. So the mokon originated in China. They're called pinyin in China, but it's thought to have been an adaptation of the Indian pothi, which is palm leaf binding, as they call it. They're constructed from strips of wood that are tied together with leather wei pin or silk si pin and rolled up for easy transport. The shape of the slat ends also determined how they were tied together. So you'll get some that have drill holes in them. You'll have some that have a lot of deep grooves in them as well, or just flat. It's really quite interesting. From what I've seen, the majority of mokon have text only and don't usually have artwork. Mokon were used for many purposes. They were used as charms, as scroll tags, for calligraphy, and for jotting notes. But mostly mokon are associated with the use as labels on tax goods, record keeping, or directives dealing with the movement of goods and people within the palace precincts, requests for commodities, summonses, permits. In other words, they were important tools for administrative, logistics, and mercantile and trade purposes. These eventually became more obsolete with the invention of paper. And just to give you some nice examples, and these are from the Suka period. These are really important, these family registrations on the left, because it does establish these family names. And a lot of times people would say, well, my family goes back this far. And also it was to establish, you know, maybe the emperor's line as well. So it's very, very important that we have those records. Then on the right, there are some mokon excavated from the Korean peninsula that have been traced back to Japan as well. And I think that shape is really interesting because they do have those deep grooves, but they also have holes drilled on the bottom. So they wanted to make sure that these were bound together quite well. Double reinforcement there. So you can see that a lot of these are not in great shape, but it's really fascinating to see that these were the first bits of writing on the left here, and how beautiful they really established the writing system between Japan and China. But you can see also these tiny little drawings, and unfortunately I don't have any pictures of the originals, but these are just the digitized reproductions of what those images look like, these little doodles from people in the Nara period. So I really like this one. This is supposedly a little portrait of the Prince Shotoku and somebody in his court, and then just a landscape of the mountains and gardens and a little house. So it's in a pavilion, excuse me. Now, over the years, there have been large discoveries of Mokan, which gave huge insight to everyday life in the 8th century. These Mokan show the beginnings of Chinese writing and Japanese writing, like I said. The cataloging of these slats are difficult since there are hundreds of thousands waiting to be cataloged. To give you an idea of how many are waiting, there's approximately, there in one dig in 2012, there were about 30,000 discovered. There are actually tours going on right now in Nara that allow you to help clean, restore, and organize Mokan. And this is a picture of one of those tours where they're waiting to be cataloged. They look like they're in pretty good shape. Now, this is one of my favorite Mokan from the Nara period. So I don't know if somebody right here was doodling a picture of their teacher and kind of made a funny face, you know, making fun of them, or what was going on if they were just messing around or trying to figure out how to use the medium. But either way, I love that little funny doodle. It's one of my favorites now. Now, we were talking about the grooves and how they're really interesting on how they're bound, and this is a great example. And it's just a goods register for soybeans. Nothing super special, but it's really cool. You can see that example for how they were bound together. So let's talk about imakimono. Hand scrolls were really the pinnacle of, or the beginning of scroll evolution or technology, I like to say. With the invention of paper, scrolls developed. Early paper was a higher quality material than the wooden slats, but still really weak. And if I recall correctly, Prince Shotoku, who was said to have brought writing from China and really started the culture of Japan, he pronounced that people should start making better quality paper. And so lower quality paper was mounted onto, higher quality paper or silk was mounted onto lower quality paper, cloth, and silks to reinforce those painted surfaces. And then they were fastened to wooden reels, which were rolled up and tied with a cord or placed in a box. And as the scroll developed, there would be a smaller reel on the right side beginning of the scroll to help facilitate a cover, and this eventually turned into the backbone, the kakijiku, or the hanging scroll. The scroll would be read from right to left, but one does not unroll the entire scroll at once. Small sections are rolled out while being read and re-rolled as the reader goes along in the story. It's common for there to be a written account of the story being illustrated at either the start of the scroll or interspersed between the pictures. So you can see right here that it says frontispiece and painting. So sometimes they'd have the writing there and then on the painting, obviously, or they just kind of have it all together at the same time. But they would keep it very separate in early period. So transportation of highly detailed paintings and writing is now possible. So to give you an idea of how large these scrolls are, they're huge, they're gigantic. This is a street view of the Tokyo National Museum with the pandemic going on. There's one good thing that's come out of this. I've been able to go tour the Tokyo National Museum remotely, which I wouldn't have been able to do before. So I got this great screenshot of this scroll. It's called the Illustrated Biography of the Principin. Now this scroll is approximately 14 inches high and 26 feet long. There are only about 1 or 2 feet of text not visible in this picture. Some hand scrolls can reach up to 40 feet in length and average about 12 to 14 inches in height. Koei are smaller sized hand scrolls that are about 6 inches tall. So many scrolls come in volumes or set, and the most well-known set of imakimono or novels is The Tale of Genji, and you'll see a lot of Genji in here. So this is that illustrated biography of the priest of Pen. So you see it says volume 7. So this is the 7th scroll in that whole series. I don't know how many were in that series. So you can see that the red rectangle on the bottom shows what part of the scroll we're looking at. And I just want to give you an idea of how detailed these are. And this is what I love when I compare European and Japanese scrolls. They're all they're very detailed. Both cultures are very detailed in their painting. It's so cool and I love it. But we zoom in again. See these lovely ladies walking across the bridge with their lovely hats and their umbrellas. And then you zoom in even further. What I love seeing is these dogs barking at this cat on the roof. And then this lady saying, "Oh my," as this guy goes by huffing and puffing. And I don't know what they're all doing, chasing this guy down. But I love to see those expressions just in those teeny tiny details. That's what's so fantastic about these scrolls. Now I'm going to go through and give you sort of a period by period review of various scrolls. So you can see examples, because it's important that we have those different examples from all periods, because somebody, as we know, may emulate one period or over another in their persona, which is a great thing. Some people love one period over the other. So this is from the Nara period. Now, the Nara period was really interesting. They emulated the Chinese period more. And then, so you can see that a lot of the kanji was really solid in the calligraphy. It's very strong. But you can also see that the clothing, and I'll just show you a zoom in of a different shot of this scroll. You can see a lot of the clothing was still predominantly Chinese. You don't see that kosode, that robe look. And this is the Tale of Genji. This is one of the fragments from the Heian period. Now, this is what's called the blown off roof technique. This is the Fukinuki Yatai technique, and I just like saying that name, Fukinuki Yatai. And so it's a great style. And it's really popular, and that's really what's unique from the Chinese style or the Korean style. It's really unique to Japanese scrolls. Now, this scroll is one of the few surviving of the Heian period of the Tale of Genji. So this scroll is to the original scroll. This is supposedly the original scroll. This is said to have been made up of 10 to 20 scrolls that covered the 54 chapters. What has survived is estimated to be only 15% of the original. And these fragments are so delicate that they're not normally shown to the public. And surviving images can also be difficult to find online. And you can find a lot of images in books on Japanese art, but they're not always great pictures. And a lot of them are in black and white, which is kind of sad because you can see that they're really rich in color and in patterns that you wouldn't be able to see just in black and white. So let me tell you a little bit about this. I know it doesn't look like much, but you can see that there's shapes of weeds here. This is called the weed fragment because this guy is whacking around in the weeds. Now, this is a stylistic technique that is called the Hikime Kagibana. This refers to use of profile or back views of figures. No frontal facial views are shown. Specific details within the illustration are important in learning the meaning of the story. The clothes, postures, actions, and facial expressions of the figures aid in further explanation of the text. Now, this is one of my favorite hand scrolls, probably because it's a hodgepodge of things. Let me just look at the chat real quick, sorry. Oh no, I lost it. Sorry. I lost it. I'm very good at that. Just yell at me, Gomez, if I'm missing anything. But this is really a good example of how the Japanese, I always feel like they reduce, reuse, recycle. They love to do that with their artwork. So you can see all the different types of poetry that they've used over the years. And you can see that beautiful marble paper too right there. This is one of my favorite scrolls. I want to emphasize that Japanese scrolls aren't always prim, proper, and drama-filled. They do have a lot of whimsy. One of the most famous imakimono in Japan is the Kojugiga, or the frolicking animal scroll. It depicts animals celebrating, meditating, bathing, practicing archery, kyoto, and other day-to-day human activities. They kind of reminds me of some of the animals in European illuminations and margin work, like those killer bunnies that everybody loves. I think they're funny. But so you can see, this is one of my other favorite parts of that scroll. These monkeys and these frogs have commandeered an ox cart and are having a good old time with their leaf hats. I don't know what they're partying about, but they sure are enjoying themselves. Now, someone decided that they needed to make a reproduction of these scrolls to make them a little more clear and a little more pretty so people can look at them better. And it's nice. It's not the original, but I like it because I can see clearer versions of it. So this is where we have a dramatic frog in the middle painting. We have kitsune, which are foxes, running around with hats on and robes, and we have rabbits chasing monkeys. So it's all sorts of fun here, frolicking animals. And here we have the animals praying and reading their sutras. We have a Buddha frog going on there on the left. Now you'll probably hear me say, this is one of my favorite scrolls 500,000 times, so I apologize. And I really like seeing the Kyoto, the archery, because for the target, they have a lily pad, which I think is really kind of fun, kind of cute. That's all from the Heian period. So again, another favorite scroll. This is the night attack on the Sanjo Palace. What I really like about this, besides the fact that there are people fighting in it, because who doesn't like to see fighting? The movement of the fire that's going on there in the background, you can see that there's ash and spark and smoke. The way that the smoke rolls, the different colors and textures of it, it's really cool. They really capture how that looks, and it's really beautiful, I think. But you can also see, and I'll show you in further scrolls, how they get more detailed with people's facial features during these periods, rather than that rounded shape that we saw in the Heian period. So you see that jawline on that guy that's getting stabbed, it's a little more defined and realistic. And, you know, I think he just insulted that guy's cow or something like that. So that's why he had to go after him. But it is a lot more realistic artistic work in these periods after the Heian period. So it's very interesting. And I just want to point out, who doesn't like heads on pikes? But you can see that there is stylistic differences from people. There are individualists in these pieces of art. Whereas in the Heian period, everybody kind of looked the same, except for their clothes were different. This is where we kind of get individualized, which is really cool. And you can see the differences in armor as well as in facial features and facial expressions. It's a lot of development. And what I really like is that they also get detailed in the interiors and the day-to-day objects. So that gives us a lot of information for what they used in period. I want to point out, sorry, going back to the the clouds, they kind of have that rolling in the flames. They kind of have that rolling Chinese look if you look at a lot of Chinese scrolls. But then if you look at this cloud here on the top of this scroll, it's more just round, more oval shaped. And you'll get a lot of mist look. You won't really get that round, circular swirl look. But again, you can see the Japanese face is still well-rounded, but it's not as curved. It's more jawline. It's more defined than just that rounded face. And there again, there's that misty look, but it's starting to get a little more rounded in later period. It's not that swirl like the Chinese. But you'll see here on the left, those horses, they are similar to Chinese horses. I love these hats. They're fantastic. Now, this is at the 15th century. This is kind of where we pull away. And into the 16th century, we pull away from that rounded face. We get into more of the oval face that is closer to block printing. The ukiyo-e block printing look that is really famous in the Edo period. And those are beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but those are not correct to SCA, what period the SCA is looking for. So you'll notice these ladies in the middle, and I'm sorry I don't have a zoomed in version, they have a more elongated face. And you'll see that in the next scroll that I'll show you. So you see that this lady's face is longer, more oval shaped. But what I really find interesting about this scroll in particular, that rather than having the description and the story written out away from the illustration, it's actually written in there almost like a comic book or a manga. If you're going Japanese style comic book, the person has their lines above them or to the side of them, and they're having a conversation. Sir, please stop. This is a legend about a woman that turns into a serpent. That's quite interesting. This is still part of that legend, but you can see that these monks are talking amongst themselves, going about their business. And I don't know why some guy's hiding in a bell there, but he is. And then here's the woman turning into that serpent, and she's going after this guy that's carrying baskets for water. I don't know what's going on there, but you can see also there's the clouds. They're getting that rounded shape rather than the misty look. And more rounded, more battles. Love me some battles. But you can see that they are colorful, beautiful. Let's talk about kakijiku and kakimono. So the hanging scrolls. There's no other art form as widely used in Asia as the hanging scroll. The kakijiku was just another evolution of the scroll, the hand scroll, and it's obviously a twist off of the imakimono. Though not nearly as long, so it's not 40 feet long, I hope. Now, the kakijiku has 3 classes or categories to determine how artwork and calligraphy are displayed. It doesn't seem like one mounting style is preferred over another in period. So with the mounting styles, a lot of times they determine this is more appropriate for religious purposes, and this is less appropriate for calligraphy. So it just depended on what it was used for, but it doesn't really seem like they preferred one over the other. Now, the kakijiku really took opulence to a whole nother level with the dawn of the Heian period. That's when it really came into its own. Now, this scroll, I don't have a zoomed out view, but let me talk about this a little bit. This is a census register for the Kawanobe village in the Chizuken province. This is said to be part of the Suko period, but I'm going to be skeptical because, again, we don't really have surviving examples of good paper from the Suka period. But you can see that it's got those seals, those hanko, that are kind of authenticating the writing, and they're saying, yep, this is really what this family is. This is the census, so don't forget this year, do your census. I think it was due this month? Do your census. So this is the map of the estate of the Tadaiji temple. This is from the Nara period. So what you see is a lake. This is the view of the manor between the lake and the wooded mountains. So you can see that they're saying, oh, this is what's here, this is what's there in the writing. I don't have a mounted view of this scroll either, I apologize. So you can, it's only described as being mounted in the Tokyo National Museum. This is the Akasara Gabara. This is the space womb, and I think that's a sweet name. Not to be disrespectful, I just want it to be my next band name. So this is mounted in the Shin style. So this is really cool. Look at how elaborate and beautiful that fabric is. And it matches the scroll too. I love it. Beautiful, rich colors. That's another thing I want to point out, and I always love to point out, is people think that Japanese scrolls are black and white and boring. They really are not. They're beautiful and high in color and just gorgeous. And this is one of my other favorites. This is the Battle of Rokuhara from the Tale of the Heiji Rebellion in the Kamakura period. And this is a piece of the emakimono. So somebody said, I really like this piece, and I can't blame them. Who wouldn't like a dude that's trying to stab another dude and rip off his helmet? So this piece got cut out of another emakimono, and maybe that emakimono was damaged, and so they said, well, we're going to save what we can, mount it, and then we'll go from there. We'll throw out the rest, we'll preserve it, we'll do whatever we can. But it's really cool that there's a lot of action going on in these scrolls. I just love it. This is the Daruma. He's a priest that if I recall correctly, he actually fasted so much that he starved himself to death. But he's the little good luck doll that a lot of people see, that's the big eyes, and he has two eyes that if you make a wish, you fill in one eye with that wish, and then when that wish or that goal, a lot of times they're goals, comes true, or when you accomplish that goal, you fill in the other eye. One of my friends is scared of them, so I make sure every Christmas to get him one, because I'm a jerk. So this is another version of a emakimono that was cut or taken and reused. This is the poet Kuugimi from the Fujifusa version of 36 Immortal Poets. Now you'll notice that in Japanese art, they have a lot of repeating artwork. So you might get the 36 Immortal Poets over and over again, the Tale of Genji over and over again. It's just, they love their repeating themes. And I don't know if it's I think I could do that better, or if it's similar to the European styles of, I think that, the biblical tale looks better this way or that way. So I think it's something to consider. And this is another part of that same scroll. And we kind of joked because I taught this class on Thursday with the Shire of Arrows flight. We joked and we said, what are we doing with the sleeves here? Why are we doing that? And Javier, he said, they're hiding their snacks in there. But really it's to cover your face because it's impolite to show emotion or to talk or to show your mouth. So this is the portrait of Oichi no Kata. And what I really love about this portrait is that it shows us what the clothing was like, but it also shows that she likes to hide her hands in the sleeve. It also shows hairstyles, and it's really quite beautiful. This is the portrait said to be of Nawa Nagatoshi. And this portrait I like because it has more than just one person in it. Who knows if this was his son or his man-at-arms, his manservant. I don't know, but he certainly liked his horse. So kudos to him. And you know, he has a sweet sword in there too. Let's talk about orihon. Orihon were made for utilitarian as well as for decorative purposes. There are many versions of the orihon. There's accordions or folios, so you see that on the top left, the albums. The stab 2 and 4 hole binding, there's butterfly binding, there's multi-section books. As per usual, the Japanese love to recycle their other scrolls and artwork to preserve them or enjoy them privately. This is a fan-shaped book of the Lotus Sutra. This is from the Heian period. This is from the 12th century. This is that book opened up. This is like a butterfly binding. And what I really love, this is, you can see those round faces again of the Heian style. And you know, I said to myself, is this Tale of Genji? No, I was so happy. Not Tale of Genji. Nothing against Genji, it's just almost every single thing I've looked up for Heian period art is Tale of Genji. So you get kind of tired of that when you want a different theme. Oops, I went backwards, I apologize. And this is a really cool accordion book. This is the Jujuritsu Monastic Code of Conduct. And this is some beautiful calligraphy, but you can see that they took in a makimono, they sliced it up and they mounted it on this accordion book so it wouldn't fall apart, just to keep it preserved. It's very nice. And this is the same thing. And this is the Hokuzonsho, Manual on Courtly Etiquette. What I like about this one, it shows different types of calligraphy, but it also shows if somebody kind of didn't have the most perfect calligraphy, which makes me feel good because I suck at calligraphy. So it's nice to see that people had a struggle too. This is a booklet of a boat cast adrift. This is the Ukifune. This is an excerpt of the Tale of Genji. But you can see that handwriting on the left, no, it's not sloppy. That is called hiragana. This is the woman's writing, as they call it. It's very stylistic, very beautiful calligraphy. It's very in-depth. Okay, and this is the Saiho Shinao-sho. This is a teaching to the Western land. So this kind of talks about the interaction with the Western land of the 13th century. It wasn't really with Westerners, it was with mainland Asia. So keep that in mind. Look, Tale of Genji. This is a particular chapter. And I like the paper. This again shows the decorative paper, but it shows that hiragana in there. But what's cool is that it shows the moon, then it shows the leaves, and maybe that's a moonbeam, maybe that's, we're doing some heraldry here, I don't know. But either way, it's fantastic. And here's some more examples of accordion books. This is a collection of Chinese and Japanese poems for singing in particular. It's from the Kamakura period. Now, this I kind of want to talk about a little bit in depth. This is a sutra of perfect wisdom. This is actually a woodblock print. A lot of people will say woodblock prints aren't period. They are. However, ukiyo-e is not period. That's a specific style to the Edo period. So keep that in mind. But we have block prints going back to the 8th century in China that were used in Japan. And a lot of times the block prints were actually kept by specific temples and were kind of blessed there. And, you know, once they got worn down so far. Very interesting. But a lot of these were colored by hand by the monks. And this is a beautiful example of various calligraphy that somebody just said, I'm going to keep this. But this contains poems from the Nara to the Muromachi period. So they were very extensive in their collection. They didn't want to share with anybody, I'm sure. So Byobu, they're they're really challenging, but they're also one of the coolest forms of scrolls or decorative paintings. These are called wind walls. They were used to keep rooms warmer and create smaller private areas in buildings. You can see other variations of screens on the mainland. In early periods, they were constructed from mostly wood, but as time and materials changed, screens became more artistic and mostly constructed from paper. The process to make a byobu is very extensive, beginning with a wood inner frame assembled in a grid pattern. A hinge was created if multiple panels were needed from paper, and heavy-duty paper was layered on the frame. Then there were multiple layers of paper added to the initial heavy-duty paper. After adding a reinforcing hinge, 2 final layers of high-quality paper, decorative edging, and metal or wood frame were added. So you can see the evolution here of the byobu. From the frame, less quality, high quality, high quality. And then you can see how they're adding the hinges there. And like I said, all paper. And I'm very sorry for the quality of the scrolls here, the byobu. Now, these are the earliest versions of the byobu from the Nara period that I have. These are beauties beneath trees. Now, these are ladies that are dressed in Chinese style clothing, but these are some lovely freestanding single panels that show the beginnings of byobu. This is the Senzui byobu, landscape with figures. This is one of the few, if not the only, landscape that's surviving of the Heian period in a byobu. They're gorgeous. I love how intense the colors are. And you can see the figures are wearing Chinese clothing, but it's still really indicative of that style of the period, very dramatic colors. I always joke that the Heian period was very emo, very, oh, I feel everything, but it's very artistic, very passionate time, so it's not a bad thing. This is Mount Koya, pair of 6-panel folding screens. So I've lightened this picture quite a bit. It's actually very dark and golden, and you can't see a lot of the detail in it, but it's very pretty. But you can also see there's some patches on the top where maybe it got torn. Maybe somebody's kid came along. I don't know. But regardless, it's a very good indication of how it changed, because you can see that everything's kind of misty and beautiful and mystical in the Heian period, and everything's very straight, almost strict in the 14th century. We're not going to get too misty. We're not going to get all magical. I mean, we have some mist and rolling clouds, but overall, very strict. This is the bamboo in the 4 seasons. This is from the Muromachi period. Very pretty. So you can see the bamboo shoots on the right. The arrival of the southern barbarians. This is in the Namban style. This is awesome because you get the first look at European interaction with Japan. And what I love especially are those sweet balloon pants. They're not pumpkin pants, they're balloon pants. There is a difference. And I need a pair of those pants. And you can also see there are a ton of golden clouds hanging around. There's a joke from, I think it was the Cleveland or Chicago Art Museum, when a lady put a display out of all these golden byobu. It was one of the curators there, and she said, you know, there's enough gold here to make a rap video jealous. So that's how much gold is on some of these screens and some of the gold from the Muromachi and the Zushi Momoyama periods. So they are the golden age of Japan. Everybody says that, you know, whatever age is the golden one. No, it's the gold age, not the golden, the gold age. Here's some more of the barbarians. And I love their hats too. They look more like pilgrim hats. Very interesting. And again, there's your gold clouds. They're more solid, not so misty anymore. And here's a very interesting pair of panels. And this is where they kind of start emulating back that Chinese style. This is horses at pasture. Sorry, let me get back to my place here. They still have that beautiful color, but they seem to leave more open spaces rather than getting, and this is, it's hard because a lot of times it's one or the other. They'll use gold that'll blind your eyes, or they'll be very simple. It ranges, just like with any art from periods. Oops, excuse me. So let's talk about Fusuma. These are the wall panels. They're very similar to Byobu. They're sliding doors and they're just fixed wall panels. Now, a lot of times people think when they see Japanese interiors, it's just gonna be that white shoji, the paper, the white paper sliding doors and walls, and very plain. Oh no, very elaborate, very beautiful interiors. And so I want to make sure that it's emphasized that some of these castles and these temples, they were very elaborate and very beautiful. This is from the Nijojo Castle in Fusuma. This is a beautiful representation. Even up to the ceiling, you can see every little bit is decorated. And like I said, this is what a lot of people imagine with the modern tatame and your typical rooms. This is that Nijo Castle in Fusuma. More details on those areas. But you can see that a lot of times they will use their heraldry on the top. You can see that on the ceiling panels, that they'll use themes from nature. A lot of it was natural themes. Now this is the Daitoku Ji Fusuma. So this is really pretty because it's getting into that ink wash painting that we're all very familiar with. It's very pretty. There's more, and you can see people say, well, that's a Chinese pavilion. Yes, but no. Japanese architecture and Chinese architecture are semi-close. So keep that in mind. And they did like to emulate each other's styles. I love this landscape because you can see all the mountains and all the trees, and it just seems to continue. Like you're just looking outside a window. And here's the Juko-in shrine. And, you know, this is a little more plain, but it's still gorgeous. It's not just that plain shoji. Let's talk about fans. This is my favorite. Yes, I know I've said favorite through this whole thing. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. So fans are actually part of my heraldry, so that's probably why I'm a little selfish about this portion. Now, the Japanese fan is one of my favorite art forms because it was a uniquely developed item for Japan. It brings a little bit of magic to the game. It's used through all the different cultures because it kind of was a huge export item for the Japanese for years. There are multiple types of fan formats that we can pull from period. What I love is that they're used by all classes. and all sexes. So they're not just used for the kuge, which are the courtier class, or the buge, which is the warrior class. Just like all other formats of scrolls, they've evolved over time. The main formats are uchiwa, which is the paddle fan, hyogi, which is the folding wood fan, and the sensu, which is the folding paper, and then the gunsen, tensen, which is a war fan. So that's not used by everybody, but I think it's kind of a cool thing to talk about, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. Now the uchiwa. Uchiwa, or paddle fans, came from China and were popular in the Nara period. It's depicted in art during that time period the most. These were mainly made from bamboo that was split into thin slats, and then 2 pieces of paper or silk were pasted on either side of the slats. The issue with most of these early period fans is that they simply did not survive. The other early uchiwa are made from silk that is stretched over a bamboo hoop of sorts that's attached to a bamboo frame, or bamboo handle. And then we can see on the left, this is a stylized garland cut in the shape of a fan, which is a lacquered leather. And this is from the Heian period. Now, I kind of cheated on this one. This is a painting. This is not a fan. But we know that it's the right shape because it said that it's a fan-shaped painting. This is from the Muromachi period. And this is where they get back into that Chinese style of painting. This is the painted fan of Wangzi. See? And this is, again, the Muromachi period. Now, I can tell this is an actual fan, and I can tell because I see those slat lines through the fan, and it's a little bit worn in places. So yes, this is an actual fan that somebody carefully removed and cut off those slats and pasted with love onto a hanging scroll. So yes, this is a surviving example of an uchiwa. Now, hyogi, which is the folding wooden fan. This fan became more popular because you could easily tuck it into a sleeve or a waistband. It got tucked into a waistband in the Heian period because they were so large, you just couldn't do it with sleeve. Now, hyogi were generally used by married women in the court, supposedly. This fan could range from 8 to 40 slats, so that's a lot of fan. Married women supposedly only carried the 25 to 28 slat variety. Hyogi had holes drilled in the top so that they could be sewn together similar to the mokan, and they had that bottom hole drilled as well. It was said that fans were painted with notes and imagery that were passed between lovers or held up as they walked by each other to be subtle or more flirtatious. The width of these slats also varied depending on the user's preference, rank, and sex. This is an example from an archaeological dig in from the 11th century. And this is a hyogi featuring Genji from the Heian period. And it is beautifully detailed, but you can see round face there. Very nice. I love that tree on the left. These were really elaborately decorated fans. You can see that they used gold and silver and all sorts of paint. They're made from cypress mainly, but a lot of modern ones are made from bamboo. This is the front, this is the back of the same fan. And a lot of fans had seasonal themes, from what I understand, just like clothing, just like folding screens, just like art in general of the time. They just had themes of the seasons. This is another folding fan from the Muromachi period. Now you'll notice that the hyogi there has a couple tassels. That was more popular during the Heian period. They were used for more ceremonial purposes. They had really elaborate woven tassels. They were really quite pretty. That's the back of that fan. This is the herd boy with ox. Let me tell you a little bit about sensu, the folding paper fan. There's a legend about an emperor who tried to fix his hyogi with paper and gluing it together. And so it reminds me of the Post-it note, accidentally dripping glue onto a stack of papers, and suddenly you have Post-its. Same idea. But I don't know if I necessarily believe the sensu one. You can again tell that this one is real fan and not just a painted on fan because of those slat lines. This is a snowy landscape. This is beautiful because you can see that ink wash style, but it gives you a view of a house clear in the distance. And look, there's that Hanko print, that Hanko seal stamp in the left corner. So somebody thought this is pretty awesome. You can also see it just barely visible right under the ox on the right. Somebody thought this is pretty awesome. And now this is another fan mounted as a hanging scroll. And this has silver in it, but I think it's gold actually. This is from the Muromachi period, but I wouldn't be surprised if it actually was from the Momoyama period. Again, there's your bling for the day. This is Hotei and the children. This is the Azuchi Momoyama period. This is where we get that Chinese style again, because it kind of looks like we got a Buddha style going on for that type of period, which was not typical. You get, I call him the skinny Buddha, where he has hair. So we more see that type of Buddha in Japan during the period. But you can also see that these kids over here have this shaven head and hats that are styled more in the Chinese style. So let's talk about Gunsen or Tensen war fans. This is a Uchiwa styled Gunsen. Now these fans were used to signal warriors into battle. Now let me tell you a bit of a story about some of these. Araki Murashugi was a samurai caught in a conspiracy during the 1500s. Lord Oda Nobunaga summoned him, but Araki wasn't a fool. He knew his life was in danger, but he couldn't ignore the summons. At the time, he was a vassal and had to bow to his lord before entering a room in a way that brought his neck right above the groove that kept the sliding doors in place. You can imagine how many used this as a way to off someone that they didn't like. This happened to Araki. As he bowed, the double doors came flying at his throat, only to smash against his iron fan, which he had placed inside the groove. Araki acted as if nothing had happened, and Nobunaga reconciled with him and granted favors. So, you want to impress somebody? Dodge with a gunbai, or Gunsen, or Tensen. What's cool about these, you see them in the heraldry manual that we now use that's been translated recently. And this golden sensu right here supposedly was used by Tokugawa Ieyasu to signal that he was going into battle. But you can also see over here on the left, this golden uchiwa, this golden paddle fan. So we can see it was used through time. It's quite interesting. This is the Azuchi Momoyama to the early Edo period that this manual came from. So we use it quite often in Japanese heraldry. Let's see some SCA award examples. And I'm going to go pretty speedy through these since I want to leave some time to talk to everybody. Please, again, keep in mind that I'm not narrowing the field for what should or should not be used as an award in the SCA. In my opinion, these are just some good examples I've seen made that are based off of period art and documents. I understand that not everybody enjoys a historically accurate looking scroll, but the purpose again behind this class is to give you a better understanding of what was used in period and to make more historically accurate looking scroll. And look, there's Genji again. But what I like about this style again is that they have their lines and the story right next to them as they talk. And that's the the Muromachi, the 16th century style. So this is a knighting scroll for Togashi Ichiro by Master Foro Pallavicino. Let me tell you really quick about Baron Foro Pallavicino. He does a lot of translation work for the SEA Japanese community in general. He is fantastic, and he is more than happy to help with basic translations. He has his bachelor's in ancient Japanese translation and language in general. So he's very knowledgeable. He knows what he's doing, and he made this one for his friend. He's in the Kingdom of the East currently, if I recall correctly. He just was put on vigil a couple years ago for Laurel. Very nice gentleman. And he's always very good to give English pronunciations of the words as well. So if somebody does want to read it in Japanese during court, they can. It's very cool. This is a Callan Cross, which is a grant of arms award in Callantyre for Saito Takeuji by Ki no Kotori. She's a great calligrapher, so I like her. She is currently in the South. I don't know exactly where. This is a Pixis Award for Hanahara. This is by Master Foro Pallavicino, but there's that Hanko again that I wanted to show. This is based off of a Nara period scroll. This is a Master of Arms scroll for Minamoto Shintaro Masashige. This is Lash. We know Lash quite well in this kingdom. This is by Mr. Sajini Nohana. And she's got a Hanko in there too. This is a fan face award. So see, they painted that fan shape. This is by Master Foro Pallavicino. This is the Order of the Laurel Scroll for Mistress Kasha by Don Sinclair. And we have an ink wash style painting. Quite lovely. I wish I had better shots of it, but it's really pretty. This is an arts and sciences display of Japanese calligraphy and sutra reproductions by Mariette de Bretagne of the East Kingdom. She has done a lot of great work over the years, and she's continuously getting better and better, but she has done a fabulous job. There's an indigo sutra that is absolutely gorgeous that has this bold calligraphy, and it's fantastic. And she's reproduced it there, that close up. This is the Master of Defense scroll for Taira no Kentaro Shigekune. We know him as Heigo. This is done by me. Now these are two Byobu, and I also decorated the box that they came in with his mon, his device. And I did them in the style of the 16th century because that's where his, actually in 15th century, because that's where his persona is from. And I just revamped some mini Byobu that I found on Etsy. You can find some for pretty cheap on there that you can redo. And I recommend using rice paper or washi. I used Bristol, which was not a good choice, but it came out fantastic, and I'm very pleased with it. And I did not do the translation, nor did Baron Foro. Somebody else did it, but he was very happy with, Heigo was very happy with how it turned out, so I was very happy. And this is an arts and science display of Kakijiku from Nishigori Mitsumune. Now, this gentleman, he totally redid, he totally created this scroll from scratch. The mounting, the painting, everything. So this was absolutely in depth and absolutely insane how much work went into that. And it is gorgeous. I'm super jealous. This is a Sensu by Artemisia Volterra. And I love the cats. Cats are great. This is a county scroll by Master Foro Pallavicino. And again, he does all the calligraphy, he does all the painting, and he does the hanko too. He makes them, actually. This is a golden griffin's talon for Lord Kano Hiroshi, or we know him as Hiro, and that's made by me. This is based off of a painting from the 13th century, if I recall correctly, 14th or 13th century. This is an award of arms for Odo Ume by Saidu of Brittany. Or I don't know how to say her name, I apologize. But this is based off of that portrait that we looked at earlier in the presentation, and they did a beautiful job, and I love the colors that they used. And you see, it doesn't have to be restrictive to what they used in period. You can use a little anachronism and twist in some colors here and there. This is an award of arms for Inaba Sachiko by Master Foro Pallavicino. And I love those rabbits. They're so cute. I think that they were actually used in her device. So I think that's why he put them in there. And more hanko. And I think that we're hiding snacks again in our sleeves. These are award of arms for Kame Seoko and Kame Kojiro Yoshinaga, and these are by me. These were done in the style of the 16th century with their devices, their mon. This is the Court Barony Award for Odo Ume. This is the translation, not the scroll, by Master Foro Pallavicino. The scroll is by Diane Peterson Dover, and the photo is by Mr. Saraswati. So this is very nice. I really like that she did a crown in the corner above the lotus to kind of signify, or the coronet, excuse me, to signify that she had her court barony given to her. It's very pretty. This is the Order of the Cygnus for Yoshida Kiku by Master Foro Pallavicino, and lots of hanko still. I really like the hanko look. It's just really nice. This is an unknown award name, and I don't know why I didn't get that award name. They just said, here's my award. This is for Nirana by Merwin of the Ruins. But it's a very nice version of a simple drawing of a lotus. Very pretty. There's a hanko, actually 2 hankos in there. 3 if you count the kingdom device in the middle there on the bottom. And this is a Black Flame Award by Hanahara. This is based off of a 13th century scroll. This is a Laureline scroll for Sajani no Hana. This is by Mr. Stonebread Madamada of the East Kingdom. Please excuse me again, I am not good at pronunciations. This is a Griffin Candle Baronial ANS Award, Uchiwa, for me, by Mistress Jacqueline de Rodinevers. This is an award of arms by Lady Faline to Egan U Faline. This is very nice. What I like about this is all the colors, and the calligraphy is very nice too. And this is done in an early Nara period style, because look at all the Chinese clothing again. It actually looks like one of the scrolls we looked at earlier. This is a poetry ANS project by Kino Kotori. So she has done the piecing together of various colored paper. So I don't know if she's pieced together various poetry. Here is an Order of the Black Griffin, front and back, for Kagimori by Master Foro Pallavicino. And this is what she came for. Let me show you something really quick. I'm going to show you a video on some techniques. I really like this video because it shows you how to do some painting techniques. Now, what I recommend, anytime you're going to be painting with a brush in a style, a Japanese style or Chinese style, you need to play with it before you start. You need to understand how much water to use, how much ink you need to use. And what's really great about this demonstration is that they show you how to lighten up that ink by adding more water to a separate bowl. So it's very helpful to look at some of these videos. And I think it's also interesting that they use a towel to kind of lighten what they don't need, or do that excess, or do that drop off, kind of like the scratch paper that I like to use when I do European calligraphy. Kind of use the little scratch paper so I don't overdo it or use a drip mark when I go into it. Oh, there's my chat. Oh yeah, I can give you Master Photo's stuff. And I have a lot of images from all over. What images in particular are you asking about? Oh, you're very sweet, Bronwyn, about my calligraphy. I've got a lot of sources, so we can talk later, but I do have I use a lot of times books, and they're all listed in my handout. I also use the Tokyo National Museum a lot. There's a lot of online databases and collections I really, really recommend. They are fantastic. They have this searchable database. So if you're looking for something in particular, it's great. And I'm more than happy to give you a copy of my presentation if you want to see all of these examples, if that helps you with what has been done with SCA examples. I know that a lot have been posted on the SCA Scroll Gallery, on the SCA Scribes page. If you just search in the group, the Facebook group, just Japanese in the search page. Excuse me, let's get rid of this. Okay. So back to the other one. So these are two videos that I've included into the handout that you can take a look at. And it shows you some of the painting that's quite beautiful. And more resources for you. So I have some thoughts about the materials. There's many routes you can take as a scribe. You can go the traditional route. You can also, I recommend that more for an arts and sciences project, a special scroll, or just to experience it. That's great. It can get expensive. You can go for the modern route, where it may be easier to get those supplies in greater quantity for less money. It just depends on your budget, what you want to do, if you feel you need to give more effort to an award. Do what works for you. Don't spend a ton of money just for that perfect piece of paper, that perfect type of ink. Me, I have a personal preference when it comes to inks. I like to use the calligraphy ink, Iroshizuku, which is by Pilot. You can buy that on Amazon. They come in a variety of colors, and I can use it for European scrolls in addition to Japanese scrolls. And I prefer Winsor Newton gouache for paints, even though I know it's not a traditional material. Do what's right for you. Now, just as another disclaimer, Iroshizuku, oh my gosh, it's painful today. The ink I use, it's not cheap. The bottle is about yay big and is about $20 on average for ink. So that's a little painful, but the ink lasts a long time. It's beautiful quality. I love it. It's so smooth to write with. Oof, lovely. So I would use that. I have all sorts of sites, and they're all in the handout, that you can use to get materials for calligraphy, for paper, for hanging scrolls, for rolling scrolls. I really recommend for Byobu and for the hanging scrolls, look on Amazon first for the hanging scrolls, and look on Etsy for the, sorry, yes, you can. I will send it to you. Just email me after.
a lot of times I'll get on that. I didn't say that, Gomez, so let me tell you, there's not as far as I know, they didn't really have a way to keep them seamless other than they just lined it up ever so perfectly. If I know how the Japanese work, they have this perfection about them, which is awesome and also terrifying. And they just line it up ever so perfectly. And then they paste over it, because they lay down paste and they paste on top of it. Paste below, paste above. They make sure everything's just lined exact before they put on that extra paste on top. So I'm not sure how they make it seamless other than they just have all that paper in that one roll. Thank you, Your Excellency, for putting that out. You just kept going on that roll of paper. And I'm not sure, I think that most of the time with those rolls, with the imakimono, they mostly just used their paste when they were trying to paste together those rolls of paper. And if they did have to layer it, they made it kind of, I guess, overlay quite carefully so that they didn't have as much overlay. But you do what you got to do. Anyway, so these are a lot of sites I use for inspiration. You can go look online for a lot of different types of art. And I'll tell you, the wooden tablet database, it's not very user-friendly, but you get a lot of interesting looks through it on how those look. And I forgot to mention this before, the mokan, the wooden tablets, I think they were kind of a precursor to a lot of different types of documents, because when I was looking through some of the epitaphs that are on bronze for that period, they're kind of on these narrow pieces. So they had all this funeral information for these people. And so I'm thinking that that was kind of the precursor to the headstone, which was made from the mokan. That's just a theory. That's just my thoughts on it. Okay, so these are all the different collections you can look at online. A lot of different places you can look. So you're not limited on anywhere you can look at for art. This is just some of the miscellaneous sites I go to as well that are helpful, and those 2 calligraphy and painting videos at the bottom I mentioned before. YouTube videos, they're very helpful. And this is the Choju Giga scroll viewing site, so that's where you can see those frolicking animals. Then Sengoku Daimyo, you can look on that website for general Japanese information. They run a pretty good site. I also like their podcast because they give you a lot of information on general Japanese culture. And here are all the books in the world you could ever want on calligraphy, both Chinese and Japanese calligraphy. So I have currently in my possession the Sho Japanese calligraphy. I really like that one. And The Way of the Brush, which is painting techniques as well as calligraphy. So that one I highly recommend if you want to learn painting techniques. You can usually find that one on Paperback Swap, or you can find it on thrift books. I really recommend finding that book if you really want to learn Japanese painting techniques or calligraphy in general. But Sho Japanese calligraphy and The Way of the Brush, those 2. I would say go with those, if any. And these are all the books that I love. If you really want to get an idea for how much gold they really used in the Momoyama period, get that top book, Japan's Golden Age, Momoyama. Your eyeballs will hurt. And also, if you want to look at Imokimono, I really recommend The Arts of Japan, the narrative picture scroll. That's a great one. And then, let's see, if you want to learn how to mount your own Japanese scroll,
Japanese scroll, their history, art, and craft. That's a good one too. And Tales of Japan. That's another one I recommend if you want to look at Imakimono. And yes, I have more. Yes, there's more. And there's Imaki, Japanese picture scrolls. That one is the best on Imakimono images and how they were used in period. That one, I borrowed it from the University of Utah because my husband is a student, so I'm using his sign-ins and his library card mercilessly, so too bad for him. Now, there are some downloadable books, which I recommend all of these. They are fantastic for examples, so if you need more examples, these are great. And then these are some handouts that I have found that are really useful. There's two by Master Foro Pallavicino on Japanese word layouts and Asian calligraphy. And then I want to talk about calligraphy in general. This last handout, I'm kind of wishy-washy about it because it's for faux hand. I personally don't like faux hand. I feel like it's insulting to the language. That's just me. That's a personal opinion. If you feel more comfortable with that, you go for it. But if you can avoid it, please do. It just doesn't look as good as calligraphy. Even if you have to dump something into Google Translate, it's better than faux hand, I feel like. Just my personal opinion there. But I always recommend contacting Baron Foro Pallavicino. There's other people you can reach out on the SCA Scribes page or the SCA Scroll Gallery and ask if anybody can do translation for you. And usually you'll get a response pretty darn quickly. People are very willing and very happy to help others in that respect. So, and I mean, I've asked Baron Foro, Master Foro, he used to be a Baron, several times for translations, and he usually gets them pretty quickly to me. If you ask, I need it within a week. Hey, can you get it to me within however long? He's very, very good to do that. Yes, I will provide that at the very end. So any other questions? Everybody can unmute themselves if they like, or, oh my gosh, so many questions, I'm so sorry. I've ignored you all.
No, I think you've gotten through and addressed a lot of things as they came through.
Yes, paper.
There was one earlier that I was looking at. What does heaven refer to in the scrolls? A blank space on the scroll or something specific? That was one I was kind of curious about too.
Well, let's see. It was in the Imakimono. Sorry, go back.
Back up.
Let's see. So, depending on when you're mounting a scroll, or were we talking about the space room? Because that's a pretty sweet name, like I said. Inappropriate. Okay, so right here, typically they have heaven. That's what it is. So heaven usually is part of that cover for the Imakimono, for that scroll. It's not really part of the scroll. It's like, here, we're going to begin. This is what covers it. Make sure that it stays safe. So it's what you see on the outside of the scroll. If you look here at the top left of that diagram, you can see that that's what you would see on the outside. It's that protective flap right there. So they call it heaven. Now, yes, the paper would be made through a molting and pulping process, yes. But what's interesting about the pulping process, from what I've looked at, is that they don't do it as, I guess they don't beat it as much as others. It makes it finer, it makes it stronger. At least that's what I've read. So yes, don't lick your paintbrush.
I have a modern video of old style paper making in Japan. If you want me to, I can post that to the general chat. I
Yeah,
gave it to someone privately, but
yeah, please.
there's like no subtitles, there's no explanation. I just watched it for 15 minutes and eventually they made paper.
I love it. I love it. Please, absolutely.
Paper.
And Bronwyn, you're so sweet again. Okay. Yes, I did. I hope that I gave you enough sources for where I get my images from. Did I give you enough information on where I get my sources? Okay. And if you're still struggling for ideas, then please let me know. I don't want to watch Aladdin. About Aladdin.
The YouTube advertising demon.
Yeah, sorry about that. There it goes.
Okay.
And it like just starts and you're like, what's happening? And I don't know, there's these weeds in a courtyard for like a month or two.
Right.
It looks almost like bamboo.
Right. And these
Small, even.
plants, they're bushes. A lot of the high quality paper, the gampi is what they call it. They are more like bushes, the paper bushes, rather than trees. And the mulberry tree they also use. The mulberry is used for silkworms too. So it seems like they're a lot more how do I put it? Tender? I don't know.
I say this is making me think of Egyptian papyrus a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Delicate. They're a lot more delicate fibers.
It's a long video, but they go through this and they wash it and they break it down with water and cold water for several months.
That's why it's called washi.
Wow.
I know. I'm grasping at straws there.
Yeah, and they turn it into paste and then they finally mulch it and then this is their paper,
Go back.
I guess, thing where they just kind of go back and forth.
Yeah.
So it's soft enough that it basically just kind of dissolves in the water after that long. And becomes
Oh yeah, it turns into paste.
Icky. So they put it
Gross.
in this nasty vat and they spin it up. But I guess yeah.
Yeah.
Lots
I
of water.
wonder how close it is to actually papyrus making, because there's someone in my canon who makes papyrus paper. So I'm just kind of curious how similar it would be in practice.
Yeah. Well, and as we know, washi does come in various thicknesses, just like any other paper. So you're going to get very fine paper in some, and you get thicker in others. They cut it out. But I can only imagine that they would just continue. Look at some, let's see, Gomez. Maybe I wanted to show you this part, because I have seen this video before. It's been a long time, but I have seen this video before. But you see how they're kind of peeling it off? Putting it here. I wonder if they use a similar process when they're adding on or continuously going with that same seam. I'd have to look at some of the scrolls closer. I was hoping that before the coronavirus all started, I could go down to the University of Utah Museum of Fine Arts, because they have a display of Japanese art going on right now. And I think they have a few scrolls there from what I've been told. I was hoping to go and take a look, but they're closed.
Yeah.
So I can't really do anything about that, but that's okay. better than not.
I
But-
did one more question.
Sure.
With you mentioned that the colored inks you were using modern day inks, but you also have used gouache and stuff.
Yeah.
What would have been something like that? Could have been like, what would be a non-toxic, but closer to traditional or more accurate pigments would?
So probably trying to think of what minerals would have been closest. I mean, it's no different than a lot of European minerals, truly. I'm trying to think of which ones in
It's kind
particular.
of similar to like period gouache and watercolors mainly.
Mhm. Yeah,
Gotcha.
there you go. But yeah,
See
it's
some of the source minerals being slightly different just because of that part of the world.
because of the region. Yeah, absolutely.
But the basic construction of the paint would be similar.
Yeah, paint is still pigment, binder, and water or something to spread it. So it just depends on what resources are available in your area and what you want, what your effect wants.
Right,
that you're looking
exactly.
for.
That makes sense.
But I also want to emphasize, don't use India ink, modern India ink.
Oh, stuff is awful.
Oh yeah, it will just ruin everything you touch, and it's sticky. It's
Really
cheap.
shiny.
I've recently had some experience playing around with fountain pen inks versus calligraphy inks, and
It's
found
a
out
thickness
the
thing.
difference. Yeah, because the fountain pen ink is supposed to be thinner to flow more smoothly through a fine pointed pin. And when I had a bottle of that I was playing with, and I tried that with my calligraphy nibs, and it just feathered and bled all over the place.
All over the place, and it falls right out of the nib.
Yeah.
Even with a reservoir on the nib, it just falls right out of that nib.
That's
Yeah,
too
I'd
bad.
never tried that before and seen the difference. Like, oh yeah, that's why I've been buying the calligraphy stuff and the Eternal and stuff for all these years.
Yeah, but I still love that Iroshizuku ink. It is so nice. It really is. It's worth the money to me. I have now red, green. I'm waiting on blue, but I'm excited.
I have played around a little bit with the ink sticks with the bamboo things. And yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so much subtlety you can put into how dark or light or shaded you make your painting and your drawing with. Yeah, you really have to tinker a lot with just how dark you want it.
You got to be careful also about those quality of those ink sticks, because a lot of them are also made out of India ink.
Yeah.
So make sure that you read carefully on those when you do buy them, or you ask questions depending on where you get them.
If I might add something, when I was in Japan, they actually had literally practices so that you would literally be in control of how much water versus ink was in your brush. And there were days and days where that's all we did was practice how much pressure to put down. So that playing with it and finding that it is very, very particular, but that's where the subtlety of the art comes from.
Right.
So even if you're feeling frustrated with it, okay, now I've got a big black splotch right where I didn't want one, which, well, if you're me, that happens. But it's worth taking the time to practice with it, because that's where you do get that subtlety.
Right. But I also use the Bob Ross rule of thumb: happy mistakes. Happy mistakes.
Happy accidents.
Happy accidents, yes. We always said happy mistakes in my art class in high school. So
Nice.
Happy little rabbits and dramatic frogs.
that's right. That's right. And I'm glad you guys like the frogs.
I loved the frogs and I loved the rabbits. Like, I'm actually really inspired to do something with those now.
They're so fun. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys about the one other thing. There's a bunch of scrolls. They're called the Hell Scrolls and the Ghost Scrolls. there's a lot of grotesque scrolls in Japanese scrolls, as you know, just like there are in European scrolls, and I'm not a fan. They have a lot of great art to them. They have a lot of great garb and everything else. It's not my thing. I don't like them, so you won't see any representation in my presentations of them. Just, no, I won't use them. They're just gross to me. So nothing against anybody else. If you want to scroll in that, great. I'll do that for you, but I just don't like them. They're kind of gross. But any other questions, thoughts, concerns, gripes, declarations of war?
Did I get everybody's name for attendance for tossing into the Collegium credit stuff?
And did I get everybody's questions answered?
I would just like to thank you for an incredible presentation. I have had, well, having a little bit of experience in my past, you've enriched me. I am feeling seriously inspired right now.
Oh, thank you. You're so
so
sweet.
much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. Okay. Oh no. Welcome. Glad to have you.
Go Kaid! I got the thing. Don't worry. Gun from Calfee, Kaid. I was all like, oh god, time difference.
We do have it recorded and we do have a handout, so it's up in the, let me see if I can throw it in here real quick. Was anybody interested in the handouts that I had for Asian award layout?
I will take whatever you've got for award layout and any text that you may have already like had translated somewhere. Like I don't know where that is, but I would like to do some AOAs.
Yeah, I can download that and send it to you.
Okay, because it's just magnuscapon@gmail.com.
I'll write that down.
But I will email you also.
Yes, email me. That's probably better. I'm blonde for a reason. Don't tell. Shh. Okay. Anything else? I know we're getting out early, but that's probably better than not. Okay, there's the handout right up there for you, my friend. And you want all the handouts? Okay, email me because I will forget. That's probably the best way to contact me. Shauna thescared@gmail.com. Yes, that's an email I've had since I was 14. So, and I will forever use it because that's where everything is. That's why you use those, right? Okay. Thank you again for coming to the class. I hope you learned some things.
Excellent class, honey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is great.
And I think they'll post a link to the recording stuff after it all gets tossed up to YouTube someplace down the road later today, probably.
Great. Awesome. Hey, have a good day, everybody. Enjoy your other classes.
Hey.
Bye.
Thank you.